Good day, sir. By the way, I am Marvin J. Ibatikin, one of the members of Group 2, and we are assigned to discuss learning disability. Without further ado, let's get started. What is learning disability? Based on the given definition, it refers to a group of disorder that affects a broad range of academic and functional skills. From the definition itself, shows that whenever we talk about learning disabilities, it is not only focused on the physical. However, it also includes the mental aspect. As we can see in the list, these are some abilities like to speak, listen, read, write, spell, reason, and organize information. Now let us get to know more what is learning disabilities. So by knowing the types of learning disabilities, so here are the types of learning disabilities. So first is dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning disorder that involves difficulty in reading due to the problem identifying speech sounds and learning how to relate letters and words. So it's also called reading disability. Dyslexia affects areas of the brain that process language. The second one is dyscalculia. So it is a learning disability in math. People with dyscalculia have trouble with the math at many levels. They often struggle with the concept of bigger versus smaller. They can have a hard time in doing a basic math, how much more in abstract math. So, fun facts, the term this refers to a word badly. So, it is come from a Greek word. The third one is dysgraphia. So, graphia means writing or drawing. So, it is a neurological disorder of written expression that impairs writing ability and fine motor skills. So it is a learning disability that affects both children and adults. Practically all aspects of the writing process, including spelling, word spacing, sizing, and expression. The next one is what we call dyspraxia. So it is also called developmental coordination disorder. So it is a condition affecting physical coordination. It causes the child to perform less well than expected and delay activities for their ages and appear to move clumsily. One of the symptoms of that is poor hand-eye coordination. People with poor hand-eye coordination are sometimes perceived as a clumsy or inattentive. Another is central auditory processing disorders, or what we call CAPD. So it is a condition in which the ears and the brain do not work well together. So people with CAPDA can hear, but the brain has trouble in processing the sound. So they have trouble on telling the difference among similar sounds in words. Another is non-verbal learning disorder, or what we call NVLD. It is a learning disability that causes difficulty with motor, visual, spatial, and social skills. Children with NVLD are often well-spoken and can write well, but struggle with subtle social cues and comprehension of abstract concepts. Indeed, these people are raised to be shy. Another is visual motor deficit. This kind of condition deficit affects a child's ability to understand information they visually see. This impacts a child's ability to read and affects their ability to draw or copy and often leads to a short attention span. The last one is the language disorder. So it is something that combination of dyslexia and non-verbal learning disorder. So aphasia is a language disorder caused by damage in a specific area of the brain that controls language expression and comprehension. So aphasia leaves a person unable to communicate effectively with others. So in some cases, people have aphasia have a high chance to be stroke. Overall, we conclude that we can truly predict the person that he or she is normal in just a one look. So therefore, we must be a good observer and be aware of the possible things would be happen, so that if we are encounter this type of learners, we can take a positive action. That's all with my part.
Good day, everyone. I am Rowan Chris Belwarte, and I'll be the one to discuss to you about assessment process and tools. Okay, so we have here two types of assessments. We have informal assessments, and second one, we have informal psychoeducational assessments. Okay, so what is informal assessment? So informal assessment, it is a method where teachers do not evaluate students' performances on some grades or metrics. So rather, they are focusing on the observing students' performance and the progress at different stage of their learning time frame. Okay, so in psychoeducational assessment, it involves examining how an individual is developing in regards to the psychological assessments or a process that underlie learning. So, their acquisition of academic skills in reading, writing, and so on. So, let's proceed to the learning disabilities. So, in here, it is a testing for learning disabilities that is usually involved three primary types of assessments. So, we have here testing of intellectual or cognitive potentials. So in here, it talks about the test of intellectual or the knowledge of your students. The cognitive potential, it defines about the general mental capability of your students. Second one, we have testing of information processing or sensory abilities that are inactive of a learning disability. So in here, these are the use to take information through the use of our senses, no? That are inactive of learning disability. So the third one, we have assessment of current educational achievement. So in here it talks about the academic performance or the academic um, basis of your students, the performance outcomes and that has accomplished to your students. Okay, so let's proceed to the informal assessment. So we have here classroom assessment. So in here, it is a set of specific activities that instructors can use quickly to your students. It is a comprehensions, like a short quiz, regular quizzes, portfolios, and more. Second one, we have systematic observation. So in here, it is an assessment for students, a higher order thinking skills in which students are required to analyze, evaluate, or to determine the knowledge of your students. Third, we have file review or interviews. So these are the important as administering formal instrument to determine levels of academic skills. And also we have a development and identity of strength and their weaknesses in learning process. Okay, so it is important to intervene as early as possible. So teachers should not wait for a formal assessment to occur before they put strategies in place. So in assessment, it identify the learning disability should integrate information for a number source including a family, teachers, counselor if it is involved, learning assistants or other method records, and lastly, and any relevant medical reports. So once a student has been referred for a formal assessment, a teachers or a principal will obtain parent permission and assistance the students and their parents in understanding what will occur during a formal assessments process. Okay, so let's proceed to the formal assessments. In here, it is done by a psychologist. It involves the usage of the different instruments, and also a psycho-educational assessments reveals difficulties in areas, and also a perceptual and information processing, a language and auditory processing, and attention and other areas of executive function, and lastly a motor abilities and or social skills as well as reading, written language, or mathematics. Okay, so overall, the purpose of these assessments are to determine what is the needed for intervention. So which also requires considerations to your students. The strategies described in here are not limited to use with the students with these abilities. So the strategies work for all students, including those who are low performing with or without these abilities. So in here, you need to know first the capability of your students, or else having a background check to know that where they are weak or they are strength in that areas. So that's it for my part. Thank you.
Good day, I'm Maria Krigzine Baguio, and today I was tasked to tackle about assessment of reading, assessment of writing, and of course, assessment of mathematical skills. So let's start off with assessment of reading. So, evaluation is an essential beginning step in the special education process for a child with disability. Before a child can receive special education and related services for the first time, a full and individual initial evaluation of the child must be conducted to see if the child has a disability and is eligible for special education. Informed parent consent must be obtained before this evaluation may be conducted. In the assessment of reading, it allows teachers, learners, and of course the parents to incorporate the five components essential to an effective reading program into their daily lessons. It includes phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and of course comprehension. In the case of learners with disabilities, there are actually many ways on how to assess the learners, which includes the following. Assessment of reading includes identification of alphabets and knowing the sounds of letters in the early years. Second, words in isolation like analysis of the kind of difficulties present while reading a word, including decoding strategies, and these could include substitutions, omissions, or addition of consonant or vowels. Third one, reading for meaning from a sentence or passage. Fourth, fluency in reading, like the child being reading text in the word by word, phrase by phrase, or manner with pauses that do not contribute to the meaning of the text. Fifth, does the child ignore punctuation while reading? Six, understanding written directions. And lastly, middle school and high school students should be assessed for reading rate. Now let's go on to the assessment of writing. So, writing assessment refers to an area of study that contains theories and practices that guide the evaluation of a writer's performance or potential through a writing task. Writing assessment can be considered a combination of scholarship from composition studies and measurement theory within educational assessment. Student writing can be evaluated on five product factors, including fluency, content, conventions, syntax, and vocabulary. Writing samples also should be assessed across a variety of purposes for writing to give a complete picture of a student's writing performance across different text structures and genres. Same as reading, writing assessments can be done in many ways, including proper pencil grip, ability to retrieve alphabets representing sounds, the formation and legibility of letters or numbers, a mixture of print and cursive, the appearance of uppercase in the middle of a word should be also noted, and then spelling is part of a comprehension or essay writing, and then punctuation, the use of the students with punctuation, and then use of vocabulary and synonyms in a piece of free writing, ability to present ideas in an understandable sequence, ability to plan and organize a written text, and lastly, organization of writing and mechanics of writing a paragraph or essay. On to the last one, we have assessment of mathematical skills. So the assessment in mathematics and numeracy is more than forming judgments about a learner's ability. It monitors the learner's understanding of mathematical language, concepts, and skills, and what they need to do to succeed. This requires an understanding of how learning develops. It tells teachers, students, and parents and policymakers something about what students have learned. The mathematical terms they recognize and can use, the procedures they can carry out, the kind of mathematical thinking they do, the concept they understand, and of course, the problems they can formulate and solve. In the case of learners with disabilities or with learning disabilities, we can actually um, evaluate them in different ways. It includes the following. So we can assess students with their mathematical skills through the following concepts or ways. So first, the ability to recall basic math facts, procedures, rules, or formulas. Second, ability to maintain precision during mathematical work. The third, ability to sequence and carry out successful multiple steps. And then, understanding of the final goal of the math problem. So those ways that I have stated earlier, including the assessment of reading, assessment of writing, and of course, lastly, the assessment of mathematical skills, can help onto evaluating the learners with disabilities and how we can help them in their daily struggles.
Good day, everyone. I am J.N. Entienza Bangkiao, and I am also one of the reporters from Group 2, which was assigned to discuss about the students with learning disabilities. And without further ado, let's start to discuss about the facts of learning disabilities. Many have labeled persons with learning disabilities that they are lazy and dumb. But for me, they are not lazy and dumb, just because of their differences towards us, normal human being. They were born like that, and there is nothing wrong with that. And we don't have the right to change them just to be the same with us or to become like us. In fact, they usually have average or above average intelligence. Often they fall within the range or what we call the gifted ones. It's just that their brains process differently. Just like in the movie, Every Child is Special. It is a Bollywood movie, and the name of the special child there was Ishan, where he has the same disabilities, where he has difficulties in arranging letters and forming into words, solving math problems, because his mind has a wide imagination of things that are different to us. In his mind, he can think of a planet, crash to another planet, fishes, swims in the clouds, so on and so forth. But in the field of arts, he can really excel in that aspect. He has skills with it. He can even draw and paint at the same time beautifully, just like a professional painter or artist, even at a young age. That's why they don't deserve to be called lazy or dumb, because they can excel in their own unique way. Next, we have attention disorders, such as attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and learning disabilities often occur at the same time, but they are not the same. Because attention disorders, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a condition that affects people's behavior. People with ADHD can seem restless, maybe have trouble concentrating, and may act on impulse. People with ADHD experience an ongoing pattern of the following types of symptoms. First, we have inattention. Means a person may have difficulty staying on task, sustaining focus, and staying organized. And these problems are not due to defiance or lack of comprehension. Next, we have hyperactivity. Means a person may seem to move about constantly, including in situations when it is not appropriate, or excessively fidget, stops, or talks. In adults, hyperactivity may mean extreme restlessness or talking too much. Lastly, we have impulsivity. Means a person may act without thinking or have difficulty with self-control. Impulsivity could also include a desire for immediate rewards or the inability to delay gratification. An impulsive person may interrupt others or make important decisions without considering long-term consequences. And learning disabilities is a reduced intellectual ability and difficulty with everyday activities, for example, household tasks, socializing, or managing money, which affects someone for their whole life. People with learning disability tend to take longer to learn and may need support to develop new skills, understand complicated information, and interact with other people. According to Silverstein, that children with dyslexia use almost 5 times as much as brain's area as other children while doing a simple language task, because they have difficulties on those fields, since they have wide understanding on things, and some also are not related anymore due to their never-ending imagination of a person with dyslexia. So learning disabilities are not the same as autism, hearing or visual impairment, physical disabilities, or emotional disorders, because learning disabilities focuses on the intellectual aspect of a person only, which have difficulties in coping up everyday activities. Next, we have emotional issues. Students with learning disabilities may suffer from emotional problems or depressions and or low self-esteem. This may cause students to withdraw from social interaction because of the fact that they are different to us. And I guess they sometimes feel that they are not belong in the community. That's why they feel alone. These same students may turn also to drugs or alcohol for relief from feelings of low esteem in order to escape the real world happenings. It's their way to be happy and free. But it could make things worse because they already have disabilities and then they will turn to drug or alcohol. The problem will become bigger and bigger. According to Giraud, that as many as 35% of students with learning disorders drop out of high school. It's maybe because they cannot take their situation anymore since they need to adjust in all aspects in the field of education. And according to Landau, that teenagers with dyslexia are more likely to think about and to attempt suicide than other young people their age. Maybe because they were never recognized in the community respectfully. Maybe they feel that they are not belong in society and feel so ignored all the time because of their differences. Lastly, we have the technology and individuals with learning disabilities. So the use of technology has been a great benefit to people with disabilities, including those with learning disabilities, to help them learn in a simple way, because there are technologies that could really assist them and suits for them to learn easily. So students with learning disabilities are increasingly making use of technology to assist them in achieving academic success, including word processing, the internet, video desk, CD rooms, and hypermedia provided for them to give them quick ways so that they can easily understand the lesson or the discussion of the teacher. And that would be all my part. Thank you so much for listening.
There are 4 legal considerations for learning disabilities. First, we have IDEA, or Individual with Disabilities Education Act. We also have Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We also have Americans with Disabilities Act, and lastly we have Elementary and Secondary Education Act. First, we are going to discuss about the IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This act guarantees to ensure that all children with disabilities have the right to a free appropriate public education that fulfill their special or their specific needs and prepare children with disabilities for further education, employment, and independent living. It is stated here that even before this act, which is the IDEA, over 4 million disabled children were denied to appropriate access to public education. So, before, many children were refused to access to public education or public school, while the others were placed in segregated classrooms or regular classrooms with insufficient funding or poor service support for their special needs child. So for the parents, it is very important for them to understand the idea or the act of individual with disabilities education, especially those parents who have a child with learning disabilities or any types of special needs. They might be able to work with the school district in the interest of their child to help them or to ensure their child in appropriate education. This act is very important, especially to those children with any types of special needs. It allows or gives opportunities to the students to get the education that they deserve. Again, to summarize it all, the Act of Individuals with Disabilities Education, or the IDEA, gives an opportunities to the students who have learning disabilities or special needs to have a better future and better education. That's all.
There are also programs that was implemented for students with learning abilities, and they are protected by the law through the different legal processes such as Section 508 and 504 or the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It stated there that no individual with disability should be denied or rejected from school participation and from receiving programs. So it means that we are promoting inclusivity, and there should be integrated with the normal students. And then for the section 508, it states there the concentrates on accessibility of assistive technology to learning disability of children. And then there we can associate with the funds and the equipments that they need for them to learn. And a revised version of Section 508 was approved in August 1998, in which makes more strong recommendation for web accessibility. So as technology evolves, they are also integrated, or their learning process also integrated with the different technological equipments for them to learn, and only covers federal agencies or state agencies that receive Tech Act funding. So they are funded with the help of these policies, and they are also funded because of this section, the Section 508 and 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So they are all covered with the law. The next one, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. So what is Americans with Disabilities Act? So it states there that Americans with Disabilities Act Amendation Act made significant changes to the Section 504, or from the Rehabilitation Act. So it provides expanded coverage for students with disabilities not in need of specially designed instruction, as well as this with serious conditions. So it has been revised with the fundings, and also the following materials or equipments that can be used with students with learning disabilities. And also, we have here the widespread understanding of new rights and responsibilities by both school officials, because these programs cannot be implemented by just the student and the teachers alone, but this is a collaboration from the officials, from the government, from the teacher, from the community, as well as the family of the student, which it has different perceptions and this different learning disabilities. And the last one, we have here Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or also known as ESEA or ESEA. So it involved threats to students with disabilities, and most prevalent among these is the perception of the students receiving special education are persistently low performing and should not be expected to perform at grade level. So these students are different from the normal students. So that is why there are programs that has been intended for them, and not for the rest of the students. And the accountability framework of No Child Left Behind, or the NCLB, the current version of ESEA. So the ESEA is the old version of now what we call No Child Left Behind, wherein DepEd produce students in different grade levels regardless of their conditions. So it has also provided substantial improvements for students with LD in terms of learning disabilities, in terms of access to the general. So they are integrated with the normal students, and there are also they also provided these students with another learning materials that could help them to learn and to cope up with the lessons that the teacher could give them. And we have also curriculum at their enrolled grade level and accountability to proficiency on the state assessments. So there are assessments that could be done in school or in the classroom, where the students need to take for them to pass and to go with another level of the school. And also, the No Child Left Behind has led the way in documenting these advancements with groundbreaking reports, because there are a lot of students who suffered with learning disabilities, and these factors could lead a Department of Education, as well as a whole wherein they can produce students which are not capable enough when they go to higher education. That is why this is truly implemented for the students to develop and hone their different skills and capabilities in school and outside the school. That's all.